Hey everyone, welcome back to Coding Artist, your go-to channel for mastering HTML, CSS and JavaScript. In today's video, we are diving into the top 25 JavaScript interview questions that every web developer should know. Whether you're prepping for a first tech interview or brushing up your skills, this list will help you feel more confident and interview ready. I'll break down each question with simple explanation and real code examples, so make sure you stick around till the end. Let's get started. And the first question is, what is CSS? CSS stands for Cascading Style Sheets. It's a language used to style HTML elements. Take a look at this example. On the left we have a basic button. This is how HTML looks without CSS. It's functional but not very appealing. Now look at right. That's the same button but with CSS applied. We have changed its color, shape, padding and font size, all using CSS. In short, CSS helps us control how elements look and feel on the web page, turning plain HTML into something very engaging. And now next question is, what is the difference between ID and class in CSS? The main difference between ID and class is how they are used. An ID is unique. You use it to target one specific element on the page. A class on the other hand can be used on multiple elements, which makes it perfect for applying the same style to a group of elements. So if you want to style just one thing, go with ID. If you want to reuse the same styles, use a class. Coming to the next question, how do you center a div horizontally? To center a div horizontally, the most common method is using margin auto, but it only works if the div has a fixed width. You can also use Flexbox by setting display to flex on the parent and adding the justify content to center. Both ways work great, it just depends on your layout need. Moving on to the next question, what are pseudo-classes in CSS? Pseudo-classes let you style elements based on their state, like when you hover over a button. In this video, you can see a button that changes its color as soon as the mouse pointer moves over it. This happens because of the hover pseudo class in CSS. It tells the browser when the user hovers over this button, apply these styles. It's a simple but powerful way to make your site more interactive and give users visual feedback. Next question, what is the difference between relative, absolute and fixed positioning? Position in CSS controls where elements sit on the page, and there are three most common types. Relative positioning moves an element relative to its normal spot without affecting other elements. Absolute positioning removes the element from the normal flow and places it relative to the nearest positioned ancestor. Fixed positioning sticks the element to the viewport so it stays in the same place when you scroll. Each is useful depending on how you want your layout to behave. काहीतरी झालं ना आता लाईट गेल्यासारखं वगैरे. Next question is, what is Z-index? Z-index is a CSS property that helps you control the stacking order of elements. Basically, who appears in front of whom when things overlap. This image makes it easy to understand. Imagine each element as a card. The one with Z-index 1 is at bottom. The Z-index 2 stacks above that. And finally, the card with Z-index 3 is at the top, fully visible. So the higher the Z-index number, the closer it appears to the viewer. But remember, Z-index only works when the elements are positioned like relative, absolute or fixed. Next question, how do you create a Flexbox layout? To create a Flexbox layout in CSS, all you need to do is apply display flex to a container element. Take a look at this example. We have a div with class container, and inside it there are three child elements, item 1, item 2 and item 3. Now when we add display flex to the container class, it instantly turns that container into flex container. That means all its child elements, those items, will line up in a row by default. Just like that, you have got a basic Flexbox layout. How do you import CSS in another file? @import is a special CSS rule that lets you bring in styles from another CSS file into the current one. It's super handy when you want to break up your CSS into smaller, more manageable parts. style sheet called style.css to the HTML file using link tag. Then inside the style.css I have imported import main.css to pull in style from another file. In main.css I have written a rule that changes the color of h1 tag to blue violet. So when the page loads, you will see the heading styled with that color thanks to imported CSS. What are the types of CSS? There are three main types of CSS: inline, internal and external. Inline CSS is written directly inside an HTML element using the style attribute. Internal CSS goes inside the style tag in the head section of your HTML. And external CSS is written in a separate .css file that's linked to HTML using a link tag. Now in this video, I am showing you all three. The HTML, the h1 element uses inline CSS to change its color to red. Then inside the HTML's head, I have added internal CSS to style the paragraph text in blue. Finally, I have linked an external files where I have set the background color to chiffon lemon. These side-by-side examples help you see exactly how each type of CSS works. The next question is, what is the box model in CSS? The CSS box model is how every HTML element is structured on the page. Think of it like a box that wraps around the content. It has four parts: content, padding, border and margin. The content is what you see, like text or images. Padding adds the space inside the box between the content and the border. The border wraps around that. And finally, the margin creates space outside the box between other elements. So whenever you are adjusting layout or spacing in CSS, you are usually working with a box model. What is specificity in CSS? Specificity in CSS decides which style wins when there is a conflict. It's like a scoring system. The more specific your selector, the higher its score. For example, an inline style has more weight than an ID selector, which beats a class, which beats a tag. So when two or more rules target the same element, the one with higher specificity takes priority. This chart shows how CSS calculates specificity using a set of numbers. Each selector type gets its own place in three-part score. Inline style gets the highest weight and are shown in just one. ID selector gets score as 0, 1, 0. That's 0 tags and 1 ID and 0. Class selectors are 0, 0, 1, meaning no tags, no IDs, just one class. And tag selectors get the lowest score, that is 0, 0, 0. The numbers represent: first digit is equal to count of ID selectors, second count of class or attribute selectors, 3 count of tag selectors. So the higher the number from left to right, the more priority that rule has. What are pseudo elements in CSS? Pseudo element in CSS lets us style specific parts of an element without needing extra HTML. In this example, we are using p-first selector that targets just the first element of a paragraph. So when the paragraph says hello, only h becomes larger and red, just like we see in an image. Pseudo elements are super handy for styling things like first line of text or added decorative content. The next question is, how do you apply styles to all elements of a page? To apply styles to every element on the page, we use the universal selector, just an asterisk. For example, asterisk, margin 0, padding 0 removes default spacing from all the elements. It's great for resetting styles or applying a consistent look across your entire page. What's the difference between EM, REM and PX? PX is simple, it's an exact pixel size, no surprises there. Then inside that, 1.5 EM means 1.5 times the parents, that is 32 px, which gives us 48 pixels. So basically rem is equal to relative to root, em is relative to parent, and px is fixed and predictable. What is the difference between visibility hidden and display none? Let's talk about difference between visibility hidden and display none. In the top row, all the three boxes are visible. Nothing fancy here. In the second row, we have applied visibility hidden to the middle box. It disappears but the space it occupied still remains. Now in the third row, we have used display none. This removes the middle box and its space. The other boxes shift to fill the gap. So the key difference: visibility hidden hides the element but keeps its space. Display none removes it completely as if it was never there. And the next question is, what are media queries in CSS? Media queries in CSS allows developers to apply different styles depending on the device's screen size. This ensures that the layout adapts for better user experience across various devices. For small screens, 0 to 480 pixels styles are optimized for smaller smartphones. 481 to 768 pixels covers tablet and larger smartphones. 769 to 1279 pixels includes laptops, tablets in landscape mode, and smaller desktops. 1280 pixels and above target larger desktops and monitors. With media queries, responsive design becomes possible, allowing websites to adjust layout and functionality based on the viewing environment. And the next question is, what is calc function in CSS? The calc function in CSS lets you perform mathematical operations to set property values dynamically. For example, in this illustration, we want the black box to take up the full width of its container minus 50 pixels, maybe to make space for a fixed sidebar or margin. So we use calc 100% minus 50px. This gives us flexible, responsive layouts combining percentages and fixed units in one simple expression. How do you create a transition in CSS? Let's talk about transitions in CSS. A transition allows you to smoothly animate property changes over time, like color, size, and position. Instead of having them change instantly, it gives your site a polished, professional feel. Now in this video, we have a box that changes its color, background color when hovered. But instead of abrupt switch, it gradually shifts from one color to another, all thanks to the transition property. What's the difference between inline block and inline block? Let's understand the difference between block, inline and inline block display values in CSS. Block elements take up the full width of their container by default and each start on a new line. As shown in the first box, each green box tracks vertically. Inline elements only take up as much width as their content needs and stay in line with other elements, but they can't accept width or height. Notice in second example how the box sits side by side but can't be sized properly. Inline block elements combine the best of both. They sit next to each other like inline elements, but they respect width and height like block elements. That's what you see in the third section. Side by side boxes with defined dimensions. Choosing the right display type affects layout, spacing, and flow, and is fundamental to CSS layout control. What is the difference between min width, max width, and width? In CSS, width, min width, and max width are properties used to control the size of elements. Here's a breakdown of how they differ and how they interact. The width property sets the exact width of the box element to 300 pixels. It doesn't change based on the viewport or container size. The element will always stay 300 pixels wide unless constrained by its parent. Next, here the box is set to 50% of its parent's width, but it cannot string smaller than 200 pixels because of min width property. This ensures the element remains at least 200 pixels wide even on smaller screens or tight spaces. Now coming to the third example, the box is set to 80% of its parent's width, but it will never exceed 600 px. This is useful for responsive layouts where you want an element to be fluid but cap its size on larger screens to maintain readability and prevent it from breaking the layout. What are variables in CSS? CSS variables, also known as custom properties, let you store reusable values in your style sheet. These values can be things like colors, font sizes, spacing units, etc. In this example, we are using CSS variables to manage colors more efficiently. The variable color1 controls the background color and the color2 sets the text color. These are defined inside the root selector, which makes them reusable throughout your CSS. This way, if you ever want to change your theme, just update the variables in one place and everything updates instantly. And the next question is, how do you create a grid layout? To create a grid layout in CSS, you start by setting display grid on a container element. Then define the structure using properties like grid template column or grid template rows. For example, grid template columns repeat 3 1 fr creates a 3-column layout where each column takes equal space. What is CSS reset? A CSS reset is like hitting the reset button on browser styles. Different browsers have their own default styles for elements like headings, buttons, and lists, which can break your layout. A reset removes this inconsistency so you can build a design from clean slate. To make the image responsive, use max width 100%, height auto, and display block. Max width 100% ensures the image scales down if it's larger than its container. Height auto maintains the image's aspect ratio. Display block removes unwanted space below the image. This makes the image scale correctly across different screen sizes. What are vendor prefixes and why are they used? Vendor prefixes are special keywords added before CSS property to ensure that it works in specific browser, especially for experimental or not standard features. They are used to give early access to CSS features that are still finalized, so developers can use them before full cross-browser support exists. How do you style links differently for each state? Let's start with the unvisited link. I have styled it with the link selector. It's blue and doesn't have any underline by default. Now when I click on it and come back, it changes to forest green. That's because of the visited state. It tells us this link has been visited. Watch as I hover over the link. It turns red and gets underlined. That's the hover state, which adds visual feedback on mouse over. Finally, as I click and hold the link button, you see briefly it turns orange. That's the active state. It appears while link is being pressed. And that's a wrap up for top 25 CSS interview questions. I hope this video helped you clear your doubts and boosted your confidence for the interviews. If you found it helpful, don't forget to like, share and subscribe to Coding Artist for more web development tutorials and interview prep content. Got questions or do you want to deep dive into any of these topics? Drop them in comments. I'd love to help you out. Thanks for watching and I'll see you in the next one.